Welcome to another top secret investigation. Yeah, we love to get our hands dirty with these conspiracies that people just can't seem to let go of.
Absolutely. Yeah, these are the ones that keep you up at night.
Yeah, and this one's a big one. This is the death of Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, April 8th, 1994, a day that I think will live in infamy for a lot of folks, especially music fans.
Yeah, so officially it was ruled a suicide,
Yeah.
but like so many of these big cases that we dig into, there are a lot of people out there who just don't buy it.
Yeah, and for good reason. There's a lot of kind of strange details about the case that just don't seem to add up.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're going to be tackling in this top secret investigation today. And you've brought some fascinating material for us to dig through.
Yeah, I've got what we're calling an independent investigative analyst's confidential investigative report, and it's juicy.
Okay, so this report sounds like it's going to give us plenty to dissect. So basically our mission today is to analyze all these anomalies and look at the evidence with a fresh perspective, see if we can get a little bit closer to the truth about what happened to Kurt Cobain.
Right, and right off the bat, this report doesn't pull any punches. It goes straight for the jugular of the official narrative, starting with the autopsy.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What is it about the autopsy that this report finds so suspicious?
Well, the first thing that jumps out is the heroin dosage.
Okay, so the report states that Kurt Cobain had 1.52 milligrams of morphine per liter in his blood. Can you just, for those of us who aren't, toxicologists, break that down for us? What does that actually mean in layman's terms?
Yeah, so basically what this report is emphasizing is that this wasn't just like a high dose of heroin. This was a potentially fatal amount, 3 times the lethal dose, even for a heavy user.
Wow. Okay, so we're not talking about like, oh, he just had a little bit too much.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about a massive amount of heroin.
Yeah, and what's really important here is that the report argues that this level of heroin would have made it physically impossible for him to have committed suicide.
Right, because, I mean, you've got to think about the actual physical actions that are involved in, taking your own life with a shotgun. You've got to roll down your sleeves.
Yeah.
You've got to pick up the shotgun. You've got to load it. You've got to aim it. And then you've got to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And if he was, 3 times over the lethal dose.
It just doesn't seem plausible. And the report quotes a forensic pathologist, Dr. Cyril Wett, who says it just doesn't add up. With that much heroin, he wouldn't have been able to pull the trigger. Not even close.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that when you've got an expert like that weighing in and saying this just doesn't make sense.
And that's really what the report is driving at. This is a huge red flag. This isn't just like a minor discrepancy. This is something that should have raised serious questions right from the start.
Absolutely. So the toxicology report alone is casting a huge shadow of doubt over this whole case.
Yeah.
What else does this independent report bring up?
Well, the next thing it looks at is the physical evidence at the scene. And specifically, it points out that there were no legible fingerprints found on a number of key items.
No legible fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we talking about here? What items?
So we're talking about the shotgun itself, the box of shells, and the pen that was used to write the suicide note.
Okay, so 3 of the most important pieces of evidence in this case, and there are no usable fingerprints on any of them.
Yeah, I mean, you think if someone commits suicide, their fingerprints would be all over those things, right? Especially the shotgun.
Right. It's almost like common sense.
Exactly. So the report suggests a couple of possibilities here. One is that maybe the weapon was wiped clean, or that whoever handled it was wearing gloves.
Right. Or even more disturbingly, that the scene was staged in some way.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a possibility that the report doesn't shy away from.
Okay, so we've got the toxicology report that doesn't add up. We've got missing fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't end there, right? There's also something about the placement of the shell casing.
Right. So typically when someone shoots themselves with a shotgun, the shell casing is going to land in a certain spot relative to their body. But in this case, the shell casing was found on the opposite side of where it should have been.
Really?
Yeah, it's just another one of those little details that suggest things might not be as straightforward as they seem.
Okay, so we're starting to get a pretty clear picture here that the scene of Kurt Cobain's death was not exactly a textbook example of a suicide.
Right, there are too many inconsistencies.
Now let's talk about the suicide note, because that's usually a pretty crucial piece of evidence in cases like this. But this report raises some serious doubts about whether the note was even a genuine suicide note at all.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about the note is that most of it doesn't actually read like a suicide note at all.
Yeah.
It reads more like a farewell to the music industry.
So he's talking about his disillusionment with fame and the pressures of being a rock star.
Exactly. And while that certainly suggests that he was in a lot of pain, it doesn't necessarily mean that he was suicidal.
Right. It sounds more like he was just fed up with the music business and maybe wanted to walk away from it all.
And that's kind of where the report focuses its attention. It's the last few lines of the note that actually mention suicide that are the most suspicious.
Okay. What's so suspicious about those last few lines?
Well, for one thing, they seem to be written in a different handwriting style than the rest of the note.
Really?
Yeah, and this isn't just like a hunch or anything. The report mentions that handwriting experts and even just regular fans have noticed inconsistencies in the pressure, the slant, the shape of the letters.
So it's almost like someone else finished the note for him.
Yeah, and that's the big question that the report poses. Could those last few lines have been forged? Could someone have added that ending to make it look like a suicide note?
That's a chilling thought.
Hmm.
And it kind of leads us to the next big piece of this puzzle, which is Courtney Love.
Yeah, you can't really talk about Kurt Cobain's death without talking about Courtney Love. She's been at the center of all these conspiracy theories since day one.
Right. And this report brings up Tom Grant, who is the private investigator that Courtney Love actually hired when she thought Kurt was missing.
Right, and Grant ended up becoming one of the biggest proponents of the murder theory. He even says, and this is a quote from the report, "There is more than enough evidence to reopen this case. The problem is the people who should do it are the same ones who covered it up."
Wow. So he's basically accusing the authorities of a cover-up.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't mince words.
And then there's this whole thing about El Deuce.
Oh, yeah, El Deuce, the lead singer of the Mentors.
Right. So the report alleges that Courtney Love offered El Ducey $50,000 to kill Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild claim.
It is. And supposedly El Ducey passed a lie detector test in 1997, confirming that she made this offer.
But here's the really creepy part. Just 8 days after passing that lie detector test, El Deuce was killed when he was hit by a train.
Oh, wow. So was it just a coincidence or is he silenced?
I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but the timing is definitely suspicious.
And this report suggests that El Ducey isn't the only person connected to Kurt Cobain who died under mysterious circumstances.
Right. It talks about Kristen Pfaff, the bassist for Hole, who died of a heroin overdose just 2 months after Kurt.
And she was reportedly pretty close to Kurt.
Yeah, and then there's Dylan Carlson, who was Kurt's best friend and the one who bought him the shotgun.
Right. And the report claims that he was pressured by the police and then just clammed up, refused to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, it's all very strange. And the report uses the term disappearing witnesses to describe this pattern.
Like all these people who knew too much suddenly died or vanished.
Exactly. And this report suggests that that's not a coincidence.
Okay, so that's a lot to take in. We've got all these suspicious deaths and disappearances, and then the report kind of shifts gears and starts talking about Kurt Cobain's state of mind in the days leading up to his death.
Yeah, and this is where things get really interesting, because the report paints a picture of Kurt that's very different from the image of a suicidal rock star that we've all come to accept.
So what is it about his state of mind that doesn't add up?
Well, the report says that he was actually making plans for the future. He was talking about forming a new band.
Really? So he wasn't just sitting around moping and feeling sorry for himself.
No, he was still passionate about music, and he was looking forward to starting something new.
And wasn't he also really excited about spending time with his daughter, Frances Bean?
Yeah, the report says he was really looking forward to being a dad, and he was making plans to spend more time with her.
Okay. So that doesn't sound like someone who's about to take their own life.
Right. It sounds more like someone who's actually trying to get their life back on track.
And there's also the fact that he was apparently talking to his lawyer about removing Courtney Love from his will.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, it suggests that their relationship was in trouble and that Kurt was maybe trying to distance himself from her.
Okay, so the picture we're getting here is of a guy who was unhappy with his marriage, unhappy with the music industry, but still had a lot to live for.
Right. And the report even quotes one of Kurt's friends who says he wasn't suicidal, he was angry, he was ready to move on, he was pulling away from Courtney.
So was he murdered to prevent him from leaving Courtney and taking all his money with him?
I mean, it's certainly a possibility that this report wants us to consider.
It's all very, very suspicious. And then, of course, there's the issue of the police investigation itself, which this report suggests was pretty shoddy.
Yeah, the report basically says that the Seattle Police Department jumped to the conclusion of suicide way too quickly and that they didn't properly investigate all the inconsistencies.
Like what, for example?
Well, for one thing, the crime scene wasn't properly secured. There were people coming and going, and it's possible that evidence was tampered with.
And then there's the fact that the greenhouse where Kurt's body was found was demolished shortly after his death.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty major piece of evidence to just destroy like that.
It's almost like they were trying to cover something up.
Well, the report certainly suggests that.
And then in 2014, the police did a review of the case, but they just basically reaffirmed the original ruling of suicide.
Yeah, it's like they didn't even really take a serious look at all the new evidence that had come to light.
It's very frustrating for people who believe that there's more to this story.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's just recap everything we've learned from this independent report. We've got the massive heroin overdose that should have made it impossible for Kurt Cobain to pull the trigger.
We've got the missing fingerprints, the questionable suicide note, the shady connections to Courtney Love, and the suspicious deaths of people like El Deuce and Kristen Pfaff.
We've got the fact that Kurt was seemingly making plans for the future and didn't appear to be suicidal. And then we've got the botched police investigation.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
It is. So the question is, was Kurt Cobain murdered? Did someone want him dead so badly that they were willing to stage his suicide?
I mean, based on this report, it's hard to rule that possibility out.
It really makes you think. And as this report so aptly quotes from Catch-22, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't after you.
It's true. Sometimes the conspiracy theorists are right.
Yeah, so maybe in this case the tinfoil hats were onto something. Maybe there's a much darker truth behind Kurt Cobain's death than we've been led to believe.
Well, I think it's safe to say that this case is far from closed.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the mystery of Kurt Cobain's death rate and follow Conspiracy Q to share the truth.